with your host, Vocab Malone.
What's up, party people, and the place to be? This is Vocab Malone with a very special episode of Backpack Radio Live. We're not usually going live at this time, as most of y'all know, but in an effort to try to raise funds so I can get to Denver, that's right, help Vocab Malone get to Denver, to go to ETS. I'm going live, and I am hoping that people give in the super chat, as well as to the brand new GoFundMe campaign I have up. I need to grab that link, actually, but if I don't get a chance to do it, will someone look up on GoFundMe the project, the campaign I just started, which is send Vocab Malone to Denver to ETS to meet with his homies, basically. But tonight we're going to be talking about something very special, which is the Venom movie. That's right, I'm going to give a Christian Apologist reaction to the Venom movie, which just came out, and it's going to be a lot different than what I've seen so far as reactions on the internet, because I've seen a lot of different ones, and this one is going to be a bit different. And I'm very excited tonight. It's Friday, October 19th, 2018. Going to be giving a Christian Apologist reaction to the Venom movie that I think you guys will find helpful, and I know that I'm going to enjoy doing. So right now, please grab the link to the show and share it so people come on in, because people aren't used to coming in at this time of Friday night for the show. So we're going to need your help to spread the word. Also, you can retweet me. Follow me at Vocab Malone. And if you retweet me, you know, you'll get it right there. Let me see. I think I might even have that up. Yep, there you go. And I can also, you can also share the link on Facebook. It's there as well. And also on Instagram. So you see the Backpack Radio as well as my personal handle all across social media. So it's going to be a fun night tonight. I see lots of people coming in already. And just like I asked y'all to grab that link and share it, please also take your thumb, your cyber thumb, and smash that link. All right, I'm going to give you guys a second while I take a drink of this amazing latte I made, which I should not be doing. This is a New York City cup right here. I should not be doing because it's like 8 o'clock my time, but I'm going to do it anyway. So let me just go ahead and... Oops, I just spilled it. Oh, guys, give me a second. I just spilled it all over my my iPad. I got carried away. My bad. Uh-oh. Okay. I think I fixed it. This is going to be an awesome show tonight, though. We're going to get into a lot of stuff. We are going to get into, just from this movie alone, we're going to get into bioethics, transhumanism, small discussion about aliens, not too hardcore. That's not really the type of show I do. We're going to get into a discussion about Old Testament ethics, all right? Specifically, the story of Abraham and Isaac. All this is included in the movie. I'm not stretching or anything like that. We are going to get into also the question of design. The question of design. This movie actually attacks intelligent design. Now, I'm not saying this is an anti-Christian movie per se. That's not necessarily my persuasion. But movies have mixed messages, and characters say things. And even if a villain is the one who says it, if it goes unchecked in the movie, it still kind of sits in the memory bank of a lot of people's worldview as they build whatever their worldview is. And so that happens in the movie. And so I'm going to discuss those things. There are going to be some mild spoilers tonight. By the way, thank you very much, Lily. That's the link right there for the GoFundMe. Please give to that. It's $590 to get me there. I'm going to do a show pretty soon on why I need to go to meet up with the Apologetic Avengers, David Wood, John McCrae, and Anthony Rogers. So much love. Oh, what's up, Anthony Rogers? He's in the house. He said, oh, you're here. Hey, Anthony, can you real quick tell people why we need to go to ETS? Anthony is actually in the chat, my main man. And then also, Lily is given in the super chat. And remember the rules, guys. We're starting right after this. No more preliminary stuff. I am going to start right after this. Remember the rules, that if we get to 50 in the super chat, or if we get to 100 viewers, I will freestyle. So do not forget about that, all right? All right. Here we go, people. I'm very excited about tonight's show. I'm going to do an apologetics type reaction to the movie Venom. Now, of course, I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual movie itself. And so let's get into that right now. Are y'all ready? Thank you very much, Lily. Thank you to the Mod Squad. Thank you to Roxby. Thank you for everybody holding it down. All right, check this out. Venom is now considered an anti-hero. Traditionally, the character of Venom was basically just a Marvel villain. And there's a whole backstory that you can actually see in some of the Spider-Man cartoons. Like if you have Amazon Prime, you can buy the digital versions of the cartoons. Just look for the places that Venom appears. There's actually something called the Venom Trilogy. And the way it begins is this. This is related to the comics. Peter Parker gets attached to this alien for a short time. And it's really cool because he gets a black spider suit out of it. So he looks really awesome in this suit. But it not only augments his powers and gives him a really cool looking suit, it also affects his personality. Eventually he realizes kind of turn him into a bad boy. So he, eventually gets rid of it. But a fellow investigative journalist, reporter, whatever, Eddie Brock, who's sort of a likable loser. Sometimes he's sort of villainous, but he's kind of a likable loser character. Sorry, I'm addicted to this latte at 8 o'clock at night that I made. Sorry about that. Eddie Brock becomes Venom and reunites with this alien who's a symbiote, meaning an alien that in our environment needs a host to survive. Eddie Brock becomes Venom. And then Venom became pretty popular for a time. He's created by Todd McFarlane, who altered a lot of aspects of Spider-Man comics, including the art style and all kinds of stuff. Even the way the webbing was drawn, he affected that. But Venom became popular, and so they started bringing in other symbiotes as well, such as Carnage. That's the one a lot of people know because there's been video games called Venom and Carnage, for example. Stuff like that. And so, finally, there's been a movie made of it. Now, they included a little bit in Spider-Man 3, but I thought that was super lame. Didn't like it. Tobey Maguire seems like a nice guy. I'm not a fan of the acting and definitely not a fan of the movie Spider-Man 3 in general. I wasn't excited about this movie, but I almost have a little promise I have to make where I have to see almost all superhero movies. So I said, I'm going to go see this. So I wasn't really actually expecting to like it because the trailers to me looked awful. The trailer looked absolutely awful. But then, when I go and watch it, guess what? It's kind of a fun movie. It's kind of a fun movie. And it has some interesting stuff in it. So I was into that. Hey, I see you, Black Swordsman. I got you. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. No, separated. I have not tried peanut butter in my coffee. I don't want to knock it, but then again, I don't know. So, there's something called the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU. And that's like the Disney Marvel movies, because, Disney owns Marvel now, blah, blah, blah. Those are within their own universe. But see, X-Men and Wolverine and, the Fantastic Four, and now Venom, and prior to recently, Spider-Man had other companies had access to him, Sony and Fox or whatever, and they messed up sometimes on the movies. Sometimes they made him okay, sometimes they didn't. And so it was real uncertain, if it was going to be good or not. And it didn't seem like it was, but they did it. What they did is a key aspect is turn Venom into sort of maybe a likable or interesting or, the kind of villain he was, more into an anti-hero character. So they did have to change him a little bit from what I understand. But there's a lot of the essence there, and I think there's a lot of stuff that's true to the movie. For example, if you guys remember the newspaper editor who's always yelling at Peter Parker, Jameson, JJ, whatever, his son, if you pay close attention, he's the one who's the astronaut, because his son's an astronaut in the continuity and stuff. And he comes back, he's the one who comes back with the symbiote aliens and all that. So that's sort of the backstory, okay? I'm not giving a whole lot away about the movie. That's sort of the backstory. Some of it's from the comics, some of it's cartoons, some of the stuff that actually happens in this movie. But what's good about the movie is the action was way more interesting than I thought it was going to be. There's some scenes that are just super fun and ridiculous if you like comics, you know. The way they did it was they managed to make chase scenes interesting, which, I mean, it's 2018, but imagine you can still make chase scenes interesting. You know, they're running throughout San Francisco and Little China and stuff. It's actually fun. The guy, Tom Hardy, who played Eddie Brock, his accent was all over the place. I don't know what that was all about, but it's not really a big deal. It kind of works with the character, and he does do a great job. This performance as Eddie Brock makes Eddie Brock pretty likable. Like, he does a good job at portraying what's going down. And the supporting cast is good. Some people were complaining about the kind of villain guy, one of the human villains, but I think he fulfilled a role he needed to fulfill. And I think it's interesting, you know, we talk about diversity in comics and comic book movies. The Indian is actually like, the villain is Pakistani. That's interesting, you know, at least, or Indian, actually. Now I forgot what they said. But that's kind of interesting. Like, there's even diversity now in the villains, meaning, you know, it's not just like a good guy here, good guy there. Sorry, that's my dog in the background scratching himself. Shh. Shh. That's really loud. Do you have to, how long are you going to go? Okay, so anyways, so there's even diversity there in the villains now, which is pretty interesting. And so there's a whole lot of good actor. And the script is, Jeff Cran remembers. Thank you, J. Jonah Jameson. Have you ever noticed how that's the editor's name? How these comic books love alliteration in names. You know, Peter Parker, Clark Kent, J. Jonah Jameson. You know, people's names aren't really like that in real life, right? Anyways, and so. You didn't hear the dog? It's loud here, trust me. And so, how do they get, some people are asking questions. Okay, well, if you want me to answer, with the symbiotes, it's a space exploration story. So this guy's kind of like that one dude who owns Virgin Airlines or something, and he sends his own private, space force into space for the purpose of exploration. And here's what's interesting about the villain. The villain actually is carried away. He's a carried away environmentalist. And so he views people as a parasite. And I'm actually going to play you some clips now to help you show about that. So I'm going to play this first clip that relates to the person's question about how they got the symbiotes, where they talk about the aliens they've got. So listen to this, everybody.
We are literally a generation away from
Can you guys hear it?
habitable Earth. Drake is using his personal rockets to scout real estate.
You know, it's a really interesting story. We need to just get to the part where he's killing people.
Drake sent a ship on a recon mission. On the way back, they found a comet.
A comet?
Onboard computers indicated the presence of life, millions of organisms.
You say millions of organisms.
We brought back some specimens.
Talking about aliens? Like, aliens? E.T. photo aliens.
Yes. But we don't call them that.
So that's where Eddie Brock is talking to one of the scientists, and one of the scientists is starting to have scruples about some of the experiments they're doing, because they're doing human experiments where they're trying to join these alien creatures with humans who are poor homeless people. And listen, when she first raises the question, listen to what the guy who's in charge of the company who wants to still do these, listen to what he says.
I understand, but it's an
Future
ethical
generations.
question.
Think of your kids. Hey, how are your kids? Let's begin human trials. Good work.
So that's the villain. By the way, that's audio from my that's audio, just audio only, from a source I will not name. But I wanted to take out specific clips, so I wanted to get my own audio. So you hear that. So this is actually very interesting. Why is that very interesting? Well, I'm going to play one more clip, but I want you to understand kind of what's going on. This is a real thing. There's environmentalists and people of that who view what they consider population control and climate change to be such of an issue that it's a major problem, that they're willing to do things almost becoming anti-human in the process. There's an anti-humanitarian streak in some of the environmentalist movement. Now, the Bible does say we're supposed to be good curators of God's creation. That's actually a mandate. So we are supposed to be good stewards, and men and women have failed in that a lot of times. But there's also an extreme where we end up fulfilling the Romans 1 and 2 situation, where we essentially worship the creation and don't have a proper view of humanity as made in the image of God. And this next clip relates to it. So the villain's worldview is an anti-humanitarian worldview, and it's also a worldview that views people as means to ends, and it doesn't have a proper view of man's relationship to God's other creation. And this worldview of the villain, it doesn't have ethical boundaries for scientific exploration, and that is very interesting because that's a real thing. When we talk about human cloning and other efforts and gene splicing using something called CRISPR technology, this is real stuff. I don't get into this stuff a lot, but this is real stuff, and it's pretty bugged out. Now, there's weird conspiracies about it too. I'm talking about actual stuff that's documented. Now, when we talk about that kind of stuff, a lot of scientists don't want to have the ethical constraints they should on this, and the problem is there's not protocol for this, which, by the way, is something mentioned in the movie. And so a lot of this technology becomes the wild, wild west, and we should not go on unfettered in the conquest, in the course of our scientific exploration. We should not go unfettered, but a lot of times that's what happens in the name of progress, and if you stand against it, you're viewed as part of the problem, anti-science. Let me play you this, where this is the villain speaking to the CEO of this company is the villain guy. He's speaking to Eddie Brock, and listen to what he says about man's place in the world. Listen to this.
Can't go on. We brought the planet to the brink of
We can't go on. We brought the planet to the brink. You hear that? Listen.
extinction. We're parasites. You're a good example.
We're right here on extinction. We're parasites. Watch this.
Think about it. All you do is take. You took my symbiote. You take pot shots at a great man trying to get something done. Who?
And he's saying there that Eddie Brock is taking pot shots at him because Eddie Brock is an investigative journalist. And in the beginning of this, he asked about human trials and wrongful death suits because some of the humans were dying, and so there was these trials, and now they were going. These human trials were leading to deaths, and so this guy was in trouble. And so Eddie Brock asked him about that in an interview in the beginning of the movie, which related to him being fired. So that's what he's talking about there.
Didn't you take from the person you love the most, who trusted you the most? That's insane. What I've initiated is a whole new world, a new species. Man and symbiote combined.
Let me tell you something, buddy. I just man, because I have spent a significant amount of time, all right, with one of these creatures.
So he's saying there that the answer is to have man and symbiote combined. And so what these aliens, these symbiotes, which look like blobs that kind of crawl around until they join with a human host, they can't survive in our environment. And so what they're trying to do is to get them to unite successfully. And then his theory is this will enable humans to basically live in space. And then they'll have an answer for the problem we've created on the planet. So that's his driving, that's the drive that he has. That's why he's doing all this stuff. And that's sort of the context of the movie that the mayhem goes down in. Now, within that, here's the first point I want to really get into as far as apologetics. There's a time, listen to this everybody, where they're running one of these human trials, and it's not working out for the human host. Okay? And they're reporting on the vitals of these subjects. And listen to this conversation between the scientist monitoring the patient and the CEO. His name's Carlton. I just forgot his name. Someone look up the villain in Venom. Carlton, I just forgot his name. You'll see what it is. I want to say Carlton Fisk, but that's an old school baseball player. I forgot his name. Listen to this, though. He's approaching acute liver failure. So that's the scientist referring to the patient as the symbiote is trying to merge with him. And then the CEO villain guy says, "Such poor designs." And the scientist says, "What?" And the villain says, "Human beings." So because of the failure of the liver, when the alien joins, this guy takes a pot shot at design in the human body. He says, "Such poor designs." The scientist says, "What?" And he says, "Human beings." So that is where we actually need to start in relationship to getting some books out. Backpack, do you have any books for us today that would help us understand better about the human design and how intelligent it really is, and maybe even some bioethic books, and maybe even some books about other questions that Venom raises, such as Old Testament ethical issues? Backpack, help us out!
Backpack, magic backpack. I'm the negative Mac attack backpack. With this sack reacts, I'm like a maniac. I got stacks of facts to keep you all on track.
Yeah. Thanks, Backpack. You're the best. This is great material. Biotechnology and the human god. I mean, oops, I just messed up. Oh, man. That was going to be a good sequence, too. Biotechnology and the Human Good. It's my book. I was playing it before. I don't know what's wrong with it. Anyways, Biotechnology and the Human Good. Listen to some of these chapter titles. Because there's not a lot of good Christian books on bioethics, but this one's pretty good. Listen to this. The rapidly changing world of biotechnology. Humanity and the technological narrative. Biotechnology and competing worldviews. Chapter 4, Biotechnology and human dignity. Chapter 5, Biotechnology and quest for control. Chapter 6, Biotechnology, human enhancement, and the ends of medicine. Chapter 7, Conclusion toward a foundation of biotechnology. Good stuff. Ooh, look at this book. I'm going to save this one because this is going to come in handy later on, but hold on that book. But this is the book I actually want to read from right now. Guide to the Human Body, God's Amazing Design. Harvest House Publishers. Put out by the Institute for Creation Research. All right, let's check it out. So this guy says that the liver is poorly designed, doesn't he? Remember that? The liver is poorly designed. Well, let's look at the liver. Let's find out what this book tells us about the liver. Well, first of all, the liver, it's part of the circulatory system in a way. The circulatory system is a network of canals. This is a way to think of it. Used to transport goods. Think of it. The blood vessels as canals. Is what I mean by that. And in that circulatory system, the blood actually picks up nutrients from the port. Now I'm using the metaphor. This is their metaphor in the book that I'm getting this information from, which is about human design and good design in the human body. The blood picks up nutrients from the port of the liver. So there's important nutrients that are stored in the liver that the blood picks up from. So it acts as a port in the circulatory system. That's a pretty interesting design. That actually sounds like it has to interlock and interface with a lot in the body, which it does. Not only that, the liver is a transplantable organ. Certain, human organs can be transplantable. The liver is one of them. And so you can actually do liver transplant. So God made it interchangeable in a sense. I speak in a sense. The liver is also part of the digestive system. In fact, the liver is part of, it's essential. I'll put it that way. That's what I'm saying. It plays a role in 6 of the body's systems, such as the endocrine system is another one. But the liver is important in 6 of the body's systems. This sounds like an important thing. Why is he saying poor design to the liver? The liver makes bile, B-I-L-E, which is kind of like the symbiotes, kind of like what they look like now that I think about it. They kind of look like moving bile. But the liver makes bile for the digestive system. And then the gallbladder stores the bile made by the liver. So notice again, there's a harmonious relationship between the organs. The liver produces the bile, and the gallbladder then stores it. And then the gallbladder injects that bile, which remember was produced by the liver, into the small intestine. Why? To make fats and oils digestible. And so notice there's a harmony here. There's a concert of things happening inside your body that you don't even know anything about, right? That makes life possible. I mean, what if you could not digest fats and oils? What if the nutrients that your blood needs to pick up to take throughout your body were not stored in your liver? Do you see what I'm saying? Why is he going to say this? And this one that I'm going to read about next is just unbelievable. Listen to this, everybody. Oh shoot, Roxby with the super chat. So it looks like we might get to our 50 today. And remember, this is a special show. I'm going live this weekend as sort of a trilogy marathon. And thank you, Roxby. You're part of the mod squad. You're part of the Street Apologist social media team, and Lily is too. And I think I saw Carmen here tonight and some other folks. If I missed you and you're part of the squad, please forgive me. I'll try to see you eventually. Make sure I give you your love. A lot of great people in the live chat tonight. But thank you, Roxby. Okay, listen to this. This is amazing stuff right here. This relates actually to human development. Listen to this. Babies when they're developing, and the mom, have red blood cell factories, because you got to have red blood cells, right? But these little factories for the babies are actually located originally now during development in a sac outside of the embryo in the womb. So they're not even part of the embryo's body yet. So these red blood cells factories for the babies are located in this sac outside of the embryo in the womb. Follow that? Now listen to this. These red blood cell factories actually migrate to the liver and the spleen. So then they go from the sac outside of the womb, and then they migrate to the liver and the spleen. Now remember, this is all being controlled by pre-programmed instructions in the human bodies between DNA and the interface and reactions and all this between the mom and the baby. This is absolutely amazing. So these red blood cell factories migrate to the liver and the spleen, but that's not their permanent resting home. Then these red blood cell factories, I'm using euphemisms to explain this stuff, they migrate over permanently in the bone marrow. That's where they permanently land. This happens during the 5th month of gestation. And again, this is information from this great book that I'll put a link to so you can buy it, because I do encourage you to buy it. I know I'm not showing the cover very well, but you understand. Then as the babies grow to an adult, listen to this. So this is relevant to all of us. If your body gets stressed out and has a shortage of red blood cells, guess what? The spleen and the liver can actually reopen your red blood cell factory and compensate for the lack of red blood cells that are supposed to be happening in the bone marrow. And I know I'm describing in a certain way, but do you understand how amazing this is? And this all relates again to the liver, because the liver can act as sort of an auxiliary red blood cell factory for humans. It's just unbelievable. Now this book has a great little section here. Check this out, everybody. See that? Poor designs and purposeless parts. 2 pages here. This is kind of a kid's book, but you could almost use it as like maybe a middle school book as well. And it has a lot of stuff that, you just don't know off the top of your head. And so let me read actually from here. Evolutionary philosophy claims that the creatures we see in the world today resulted from millions of years of natural selection's trial and error. Because of this belief, many evolutionists contend that the human body is littered with useless, they call vestigial, or poorly designed organs left over from evolutionary tinkering. So that's the worldview, the presupposition present. They also claim the presence of these organs refutes the existence of a designer. What omniscient, omnipotent creator would invest effort in parts without purpose? ? However, if scientists found evidence of poor design, it would not actually prove that humans evolved. It would only show that good design was corrupted. Even bad design is still design. For example, he says poor design, that's still saying it's design, But is there such thing as bad design within the human body or purposeless parts? We can find some answers by studying several of the organs that were once believed to be just that. And did you know that in 1890, most scientists who believed in evolution thought that the human body had over 180 useless organs. They thought these were holdovers from evolutionary tinkering. That number is virtually now shrunk to 0. And even when we get into the so-called thing of junk DNA, that's basically been disproven to be a myth. Oh, shoot. Lily R. says, now we only need a penny for a freestyle. Dang, you folks are insane up in here. Favorite number, Roxby. Hey, guys, much love. Seriously, Lily R. and Roxby, you guys are like, if everyone was like you, man. But they can't be. You guys are unique. But nonetheless, everybody remember, it's not just for the freestyle, although I'm going to do a freestyle tonight at the end of the show now. It's also to get me to Denver. I'm trying to go to the Evangelical Theological Society annual meeting. That's why I'm doing a show tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday. I'm doing special. I don't usually go live this much. I'm doing this in an effort to help the campaign, because I don't only want to use the GoFundMe. So that's part of what it is. But I also want to offer you guys content. And so that's what's going on. So that's a phenomenal book, and that's a phenomenal point. And I wanted to bring that out in relationship to the liver. Now, I didn't get to record. I don't have audio of that clip particularly, right? But very interesting stuff, don't you think? Now, let me see, what time were we? Okay. Jeff, give me about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'm going to bring you on. I have a special guest tonight, everybody, by the way. So give me about 5 or 10 minutes, Jeff, and then I'm going to bring you on, okay? I see you're there, which I appreciate you. Okay, now let me mention a few other things about the movie that I caught. So the reason why I bring that up is because if someone is just hearing it, let's say you're an 18-year-old who's watching Venom, right? And you don't care about science. I mean, you think those guys have some truth and stuff, but you're on Twitter, you're on Instagram, whatever, right? Snapchat, really. And the guy's a villain, and you're not thinking too deeply about it, but all you know is the guy says, poor design human beings have, in reference to the liver. That sticks with you now. All of a sudden, that's part of something you've heard. It's like part of the memory bank that you have about the human. You see, it kind of, it's just there. And the reason why I'm doing the show tonight is because that's important. That's very important to deal with that. And I think I dealt with it. You could do more, obviously, but I think I dealt with that false canard, right? But if it doesn't get dealt with, I'm grounding myself. I'll help you more. Oh, Rox B, yes. Hey, I see your message. Don't even worry. Like, ain't nobody tripping on. Like, I'm just saying you're great, so it's all good. I see your message. And Rocky6, thank you for the super chat. Michelle Marie, thank you for the super chat. Man, you got some awesome people up here. You guys are the dopest. So the point though is, a lot of these reviews I've seen, because I've been trying to watch some Christian reviews and read them, they don't deal with these things like I think they should. And I don't know why. I'm not saying there's no one that hasn't done it, but I think these things should be dealt with when we talk about this movie. Now, a lot of the reviews I've seen, what do they mainly focus on? They mainly focus on Venom being some kind of movie to try to get us ready for demon possession. And they think that Venom is sort of a big analogy for demon possession. I don't tend to agree. I think we should deal with the worldview issues that are present there clear head on, but the process of joining with one of these symbiotes is not portrayed as pleasant. In fact, I was almost going to play it, but he swears in it, so I didn't want to play it at this point. He talks about how unpleasant it is, and they symbiotes kill most of the people they join with. And when they take you over, you do crazy things like bite people's heads off. So it's not portrayed as a good thing. Venom sort of becomes an anomaly. They call him a traitor because the whole point of these symbiotes is they want to conquer the earth and take it over. In fact, let me play that clip. This is at the end when Venom has a pretty funny conversation with Eddie, because the movie becomes good, not really in the first third. It's okay there. It becomes good later on once Venom and Eddie have a buddy-buddy relationship, and the movie almost becomes a buddy comedy. And so let me play the very end of the movie where they talk about it.
Hey, don't give up on her, either of you.
That's Stan Lee, by the way.
Who's that guy?
Hear that voice?
This thing looks delicious.
That's Venom talking.
I have absolutely
That's Eddie.
no
So
problem.
Venom is talking to Eddie like in his head.
You're gonna have to have some ground.
So listen to this.
You cannot just go around eating anybody that you want to.
I cannot.
No, you cannot. All right, we need to reiterate this. There are good people in this world, a lot of them, and then there are bad people. You have to tell the difference. The deal is, you will only ever be allowed to touch, harm, hurt, possibly, very possibly, eat very, very bad people, but never, ever, ever good people. All right?
Fine.
Good.
But how does one tell the difference?
Well, super simple. I mean, you just.
So he's saying to Venom, because Venom likes to eat people's heads and stuff. He's saying you can't eat people's heads off anymore. So there's sort of a dark comedy aspect to this, to this movie, because it's like, wait, what? But it's actually not as grotesque as it could be. There's a lot of talk that Venom was going to be a rated R movie when it first was discussed. It was going to come out, but it ended up being a PG-13, and I think that's a good rating for it. You know what I'm saying? So he's saying we'll only eat the bad people. I mean, we're not saying all this is ethical, but it's an interesting conversation. Now listen to this. The character basically gives Venom no objective way to know good people from bad people. Listen to this, because Venom says, how do you know the difference between a good person and a bad person? Because he's saying, which one's going to eat their heads off? He doesn't give any objective standard of morality. It's fascinating. He basically says you feel it. It's this totally subjective epistemology, a totally subjective morality. Listen to what he says here. Listen to Eddie instructing Venom on morality here.
Like, you can intuit it, you can sense it.
You can intuit it, you can sense it. That's his instructions to Venom about whose head to eat off and not. Do you see how empty a non-biblical worldview is? Because The answer for the Christian has to do with what matches God's standard. How do we know what God's standard is? God's standard is expressed in his word to his creatures. Why is that the standard? Because it's based upon God. So what God lays down is ultimately a reflection of his holiness. Why is he the standard? He's the only self-existent being. He's the only one by which things could be measured. He's the only eternal one. And by definition, not only is he self-existent, he's good. So by definition, he's inherently the thing needed by which to judge other things. We can't judge things by any other thing other than the standard of the perfect, who is God alone. See, there's a place where the buck stops in the Christian worldview, and it's God. That makes sense. That's a resting place for morality. The secular worldview has no such thing. So he says, well, I just basically I listen to my heart is basically what he's saying.
Sometimes you can't even feel it.
Whatever you say.
Sometimes you can kind of just feel it.
To eat now. Otherwise, your liver, it's starting to look really, really good.
Did you hear that? This is funny. He said, what do we do now? He's saying, let's go get something to eat, Venom. He says, otherwise your liver's starting to look really, really good, because these symbiote hosts actually eat upon, that's why they're like parasites, they eat upon their hosts. And he's kind of joking, because he's not going to kill his host, because now him and Eddie are basically friends. But he's saying, hey, we better go get something to eat, otherwise your liver's starting to look really good. And as a part Italian, I was offended at this scene. You know why? Because when they're having this conversation, they go right, because there's like a little Italy sort of in San Francisco, they go right beside an Italian restaurant that looked really good to me. And he doesn't say, let's go there. He should have said, hey, there's a great place right here. Let's go get some Italian food. But he says something else. I forget what he said. But he didn't just stop right. He should have just stopped right there at that Italian spot. You know what I'm saying? So I took great offense at that part of the movie. It's horrible. Total racist BS, you know?
Yeah, tell me, I know a place down here.
See, I know a place down here. It's not the Italian spot.
Hey, Mr. C.
And so with that, he by the way, guys, hopefully you can tell what I'm joking. He's saying your liver looks really good and tasty. So man, the liver took a lot of hit in in this show, right? Shout out to Rocky Siggs. Oh shoot. You're trying to get me in trouble. Presuppositional versus evidential apologetics. David Wood versus me. David Wood is my homie. That'd be an interesting conversation to have with him at some time, Rocky, because I am a sort of mild presuppositionalist myself. Thank you for the super chat. And Gwendolyn, thank you for the super chat. I might be able to get to Denver because of y'all. And again, consider the GoFundMe too, because I think they take out a little bit less as far as percentages. All these companies take out some than Google does, but you know how it is. My PayPal's also on my YouTube. Okay, so interesting stuff, don't you think? Let me see if there's one more audio clip I was going to play. Hold up. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, here's the last ones, right? So,
Body, Eddie. You been meditating like I showed you?
No, I have not, and it does not work.
It doesn't work because you don't give it a chance.
No, it doesn't work.
So Eddie stresses out, right? And so he's friends with a lot of folks in like Little China here in San Francisco. And so he's talking to the lady, and she says, Eddie, have you been meditating like I've told you to? And here's what's interesting. This is the last thing I want to play. Then I'm going to bring up Jeff. Jeff, if you could call in a second on Skype. I see I missed a call from you once. This is interesting. Everyone, if you get a chance, Google this sometime. Eckhart Tolle. E-C-K, I believe, H-A-R-T-T-O-L-L-E. Now, 10 years ago, when I started Backpack Radio on actual physical radio, one of the very first shows I did was a critique of Eckhart Tolle. Why? He was Oprah's big guest at the time. And if you Google Eckhart Tolle and then put in the word apologetics, you're probably not going to find my show. I think the show I did like 10 years ago was erased off the internet. But other people did some great stuff, such as an apologetic show out of L.A., and they did a good criticism of Eckhart Tolle. And listen, they actually play part of Eckhart Tolle in Venom. So he does go and meditate later on, and he slips in a CD that says Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle is a total New Age quack. Now, he's a smart guy, but he takes Eastern mystical stuff and tries to apply it to people with a bunch of silliness and nonsense. So let me play some of that.
Realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have.
The present moment is all you ever have.
Make the now the primary focus of your life.
Make the now the primary focus of your life. That sounds like what Qui-Gon told Obi-Wan to do. Doesn't sound like good Christian wisdom, though.
Action is often better than no action, especially if you've been stuck in an unhappy situation for a long time.
Hear that?
If it is a mistake, at least you learn something, in which case it's no longer.
All right, so there's that. Hey, I see David McBride is there. Yeah, David McBride, I don't know how you did it, bro, but you got 27,000 subscribers on YouTube. I did check out your stuff today. Everyone, check out David McBride. He's got a song on YouTube, and he's been promoting it. So I don't really do musical interviews, you know what I'm saying? So that's not really in my wheelhouse, but I will encourage people to, hey, go ahead and check out David McBride and his stuff. He seems like a good dude, a cool dude, and so much love to you, bro, and it's good to see some of the people up in here. So how y'all doing? All right, now let us get on my main man, Jeff Cran, because I'm going to bring Jeff Cran on. Why, you may ask? Let me see if I can call you. You might not even have to call me, bro. All right, I'm trying to call you right now because we need to deal with this Abraham situation. And so when it comes, when I say Abraham situation, there's one clip I have that I haven't played yet. Hey, wait, what's going on with my camera? Oh, it's changing on me. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Oh, I know why it's doing that, because when it interacts with Skype, it changes it. So anyways, I'm calling Jeff right now. Okay, so looks like we got Jeff up. Hey, how you doing, bro? Make sure your video's up, and let's bring you on. Welcome to Backpack Radio Live, everyone. Jeff Cran. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing good. I just hit the video button, so we'll see. There we go.
All right, awesome. Everyone give it up for my main man, Jeff Cran. Woo! All right, I think I've got your, I got a little namey thing for you, so let me bring that up. All right, cool. Sure. All right, awesome.
Well, Roxby remembered me, so that's cool.
That's good. Well, you're a memorable guy. All right, I'm excited about this show today, Jeff. Now, Jeff, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this audio, so you might need to
I've also have the YouTube up.
Yeah, so maybe just for this section, listen to the audio I'm about to play, okay? Because it's going to be this is the scene here. Let me set it up, everybody, and you get ready because you're going to need to hear this audio. So here's what's going on. This is the last audio I'm going to play, and then we're going to deal with this because this is the big attack. This is why I labeled this Venom movie throws shade at the Old Testament. Here's what happens. They're about to do one of their human experiments, right? So the CEO guy. And in comes a guy, and they're going to attempt to join him with the symbiotes. And while they do it, this guy tells a whole story from Genesis 22, where Abraham was commanded by Yahweh to sacrifice Isaac. And in the course of that, he throws a little bit of shade at Yahweh. That's actually what happens. And so let me read some of this account while Jeff's getting ready here.
I'm trying to figure out how to get it so that I can hear your clip.
Maybe
I have the YouTube up.
You might have to temporarily not listen to me on Skype and temporarily just only listen to YouTube. But
yeah, if I do that, I'll lose you.
I got you. Well, I'll tell you what they say if you can't do it. But here's the account, everybody. After these things, Genesis 22, God tested Abraham. So the reader's already cued into what's happening. And said to him, Abraham. And he said, here am I. He said, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love. So notice how God is specifically sort of reminding Abraham of the covenant relationship between the three of them. And go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I shall tell you. Now this would be a shocking thing to hear, right? So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, took 2 of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. And he cut the wood for the burnt offering and arose and went to the place which God had told him. On the 3rd day, that's not incidental, by the way, or coincidental, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his young men, so this is the company traveling with him, stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you. So it seems like Abraham's saying, and he is according to Hebrews, that they're both going to come back. And Abraham took the wood, notice it's wood, of the burnt offering and laid it on Isaac his son. And he took in his hand the fire and the knife. So they went both of them together. And Isaac said to his father Abraham, my father! And he said, here am I, my son. He said, behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Abraham said, God will provide for himself the lamb for a burnt offering, my son. So they went both of them together. Now I'm not going to read the rest, but we are going to get into it. Now I'm going to play you the clip where the villain tries to encourage this human trial volunteer who didn't really know what he was getting into. He's like a poor homeless guy, to be brave before he is going to join with the symbiote. Okay? Listen to this carefully, this speech.
History starts now.
History starts now.
This is day 1.
This is day 1.
This is first contact.
This is First Contact.
Let's get to work.
Let's get to work. Okay, so now they're bringing in this man whose name is Isaac. And while they're bringing in Isaac, they're unleashing the chamber with the symbiote. So the symbiote's like crawling out right now. And it's kind of like type of thing, you know what I'm saying? And here comes the subject is what they call him, you know. And now Isaac is going to talk, or I'm sorry, the villain is going to talk to Isaac through the glass. Okay?
Put me through.
Put me through. So listen to this.
There's no need to be frightened, Isaac.
There's no need to be frightened, Isaac. I mean, really?
There's no need. Isaac. You know that's a biblical name?
Isaac. You know that's a biblical name?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
God said to Abraham, give me your son, show me you are willing to sacrifice.
God said to Abraham, give me your son, show me you're willing to sacrifice. Now that's a paraphrase, but we know what he's talking about. He's talking about Genesis 22.
One thing most precious to you, and Abraham was willing.
The thing most precious to you, and Abraham was willing.
What's always impressed me about that story?
What's always impressed me about that story?
It isn't Abraham's sacrifice, it's Isaac.
Isn't Abraham's sacrifice, it's Isaac's.
Now, I don't know what kind of God would ask that of someone, but...
Hear that? Now, I don't know what kind of God would ask that of someone. That's some shade. Now, what's so interesting about that is in this guy is basically putting himself in the place of God, but not with the good covenantal intentions, not with the hesed of Yahweh in the Old Testament. Yet with this sort of God complex himself, he's saying, Isaac, you sacrifice for the betterment of something. It's weird, he's criticizing the morality of God while saying, you're going to be my Isaac in this situation, except the difference is he goes through with it. There's no object lesson designed. It's for his own ill will, intents, and purposes to further his own ends.
Doesn't change anything for me. Isaac
doesn't change anything for me. So he's saying, I don't know what kind of God would ask that of anyone, but it doesn't change anything for me.
is still the hero of this story.
Isaac is still the hero of the story. So he's kind of blowing smoke up his butt, you know.
Look around you.
Look around you. Look at the world. So here's where he relates the problem of evil to, and he's saying basically this is a solution. So this is his gospel message, basically.
You see war, poverty, a planet on the brink of...
You see war, poverty, a planet on the brink of destruction. My question is, if you don't have... Why is that even... How can you morally judge that as something other than just the state of the world if you have an evolutionary worldview in the first place? But listen to this.
Perhaps I would argue that God has abandoned us.
I would argue that God has abandoned us. Now, there's the problem of evil against God, but it's sort of a leap that he's talking about, right? He's like, I would argue that God has abandoned us. Now, it's a little confusing. Did this character believe in God or not with what he's saying there, right?
He didn't keep his end of the bargain, Isaac, so now it's down to you and me to put this...
He didn't keep his end of the bargain, Isaac, so now it's down to you and me. Now, remember, this guy knows Genesis, apparently. You know, he at least knows Genesis 22, but does he forget about Genesis 3? We're living in a fallen world. We're living in a Genesis 3 world.
Right. And this time, Isaac, we can.
It's up to you and me to make it right, and this time, Isaac, we can.
We will. This time,
we will.
I will not abandon us.
This time, I will not abandon us? What? See, this dude has a God complex, and the interesting thing is, when you take away the true God of the universe as the object of worship, you notice how it messes up everything else in your system. You have an improper view of humans, improper view of the creation, and an improper view of self. He has put himself in the place of God. It's an act of idolatry. Now, I know the movie is just being an action movie, and it's doing what it does. But notice, why are they talking about a biblical story at this moment? And what's going on here? I don't see how Christian apologists can watch this and not pick up on this stuff. And instead, a lot of the reviews I saw for Venom were like, Illuminati confirmed. People. Let's deal with the big, obvious, clear stuff, not this made-up symbolism, please. Some of you are going to get mad at that. All right, so now you know what's about to happen now. Okay, so, Jeff, that's the end of the clip. I'm just looking for the sound effects. But I've pretty much relayed all of it to you. And so I think you've heard most of it. So, Jeff, give the audience, and by the way, thanks again for joining the show, Jeff. You're a frequent guest and you're my buddy. Give the audience let's work through this Genesis 22 passage. Let's give the audience an apologetic. So let's someone says, yo, I just saw Venom. You're a Christian, right? What do you think of that part where he was... Now, people don't really do this, but, you know, it becomes part of the narrative. Where God... Is it true God asked a man to sacrifice his son? Is that true? Let's walk through it, Brother Jeff.
Okay. I mean, if you're... This whole... you know, it was Alan Dershowitz that once said that he would bring God up. This is a Jewish lawyer on child abuse charges, if that was done today. So this thing has been played out a lot.
Obama too said that if we saw Abraham doing this, we would have to call CPS on him, Child Protective Services. Obama had because his point was we can't use the Old Testament or the Bible for law, and in the context of that, he threw Genesis 22 under the bus. So yeah, it's a canard. Go ahead.
Yeah. First of all, we have to remember there's a narrative here. When guys pull this sort of stuff, they're ignoring the context within the larger story. It's sort of like tuning into Romeo and Juliet and seeing Romeo fall on his sword, but you have no idea why. And then you use that as a justification for suicide because Romeo did it. And You're missing the whole point of Romeo and Juliet, which is the evil of family blood feuds. So it's not Shakespeare saying, hey, this is a really good plan. Fall in love with a woman whose family hates you so that you both can commit suicide because that's the highest goal of life. That would be pulling a scene out of Romeo and Juliet without paying attention to the larger story. So you have to plug this into the narrative of the Torah and the narrative of the scriptures. First of all, let's note one important thing. Isaac never gets killed.
Right, yeah, you notice, so I played the full clip there. The villain, and nowhere in the movie, now their interest is not in defending the Bible, but there's no further discussion, or this is never mentioned or brought up again, meaning all you're left to believe is, whoa, God of the Bible asked a dude to kill his son. That's you're left hanging there with that. And then the guy basically says, but don't worry, I'm more moral than God, so we'll take care of it, you know. So yeah, Isaac is not sacrifice, which you could even argue, couldn't you, Jeff, that one of the main points, one of the big ideas of the takeaways from Genesis 22 is that God does not want human sacrifice, which is in contradistinction to a lot of the pagan religions that were the cultural neighbors of Israel. So the funny thing is, by this guy, the villain of Venom, throwing shade at the God of the Old Testament is kind of, to use that phraseology, now they're the same person. I'm just using that because it's God in the Old Testament acting. He's actually not condemning Yahweh. He's actually condemning all the pagan religions surrounding Israel, because a lot of them had forms of human sacrifice, which I would argue our culture, in a way, still does have a form of human sacrifice in the sacrament. It's sort of a secular sacrament of abortion. Mm-hmm. But go ahead. I don't want to steal your thunder.
But I wanted to get that on the table there, that when you get to the end of the narrative, Isaac doesn't get sacrificed and a ram gets substituted in his place. Now you need to understand, even the rabbis looked at the substitution of Isaac and related it to the Exodus, because they said the blood on the doorpost, that was the blood of the lamb. One rabbi says the blood of Isaac, because as a ram sacrificed for Isaac, so too the blood on the doorpost protected the children of Israel by applying a substitute. So they saw a larger story in this based on the idea of substitution.
Right. So there's a redemptive narrative that's being woven throughout the history of Israel and indeed the world. Yeah, it's clear if you're paying attention.
It's clear if you're paying attention and you're not pulling out of its context. Okay. So that's one thing that you have to deal with right there, is that the bottom line of the story isn't about God actually getting Abraham to kill his son.
Right.
It's about God substituting, so that really Isaac's life was beholden to God and there was a substitute provided for him. Mm-hmm. And so the covenant is connected with the substitution, not with the actual death of Isaac. So there's been a little bit of a bait and switch here, where you've looked at one feature of the story and ignored really what the story points to in its end moral.
What is the end moral of the story, Jeff Crane?
The end moral of the story is that God has provided a substitutionary system being realized in his Son, who is the Lamb of God. And so when John says, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world, his Jewish audience is going back to the Passover in Exodus 12 and Exodus 22 with the binding of Isaac, which is still part of the prayer book to this day. And what they should have done was connect Genesis 22 with Exodus 12 with Isaiah 53, and then recognize that there was the Messiah by connecting that concept all the way through the weave of Scripture.
In fact, it's referred to as Akedah, which is Akedah, which in Hebrew means the binding. Correct?
Right.
Yeah, there's a Modest Yahoo album of that name, and one time I was listening to it with you in the car, and you're like, "Oh, okay." You caught up on that right away.
Yeah, and so that's there. Now let's deal with a few other things. We have a human being who is a created creature taking upon himself the prerogative of God, who is the creator.
Right, because he's sort of holding life in his hands.
Yeah, and so you have this creature basically turning to the one who made. You have the pot turning to the potter and saying, I'm better than you. And so logically, if the potter isn't so good, the pot is really lousy.
Right.
So the answer is the pot can't claim to be as superior to the one who made it. By the way, the prophets use that. Shall the pot say to the potter, why have you made me thus? In Jeremiah. And God pulls out the same argument, that it's absolutely ridiculous for this creature of finite knowledge to critique the infinite creator.
Right, and I brought this book up earlier, or should I say the backpack brought it up. Remember this book? You and I study this in seminary. Mm-hmm. Is God a Moral Monster by Paul Copan, Making Sense of the Old Testament God. Now, no one agrees with everything in every book, so sometimes the answers in this book I don't necessarily ride with, but there's a lot of good information and that I do ride with. And actually, let me read a little bit from pages 51 and 52 of this book, because the key point ultimately about the Abraham and Isaac situation in Genesis 22 is that really Jesus is the second Isaac. And so let me read here what Copan's written. I appreciate this here because it helps put it in New Testament perspective, which is the end of the account in a manner of speaking. Quote, "The story of Abraham and his one and only son," notice that language was used there, Isaac, actually foreshadows God the Father's offering the redemptive sacrifice of the second Isaac, his one and only son. John 3:16, everybody. Rather than this being forced upon the son, divine child abuse, as Richard Dawkins calls it, the Father is not pitted against the Son. Jesus Christ willingly laid down his life and then took it up again. John 10:15 through 18. God sent his Son into the world, John 3:17, to bear Israel and humanity's curse and alienation on the cross. Yet God the Son himself came into the world, John 9:39, to save it. With three wills of Father, Son, and Spirit united as one, the triune God gave his very self to rescue and redeem humankind. For God was in Christ reconciling the world to himself, 2 Corinthians 5:19. If you remember our professor, Garrett DeWeese, that was like his favorite verse in the Bible, Jeff, if you remember that verse that Copan just quoted. One more paragraph, everybody, because this is good stuff. Abraham's unquestioning yet difficult obedience to the covenant God not only helped shape and confirm Israel's identity in Abraham, but also provided a context for understanding God's immense self-giving love in the gift of his Son. When Abraham's dedication to God's command was confirmed, God said, quote, "Now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." Genesis 22:12. Because remember, God does not withhold his only son. You see that? Harking back to Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac, Paul uses this story to remind believers of God's supreme dedication to them. Quote, "He who did not spare his own son, but delivered him over for us all, how will he not also with him freely give us all things?" Romans 8:32. Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac anticipated God's self-sacrifice in Christ. Abraham demonstrated his faithfulness to God, and God's sacrifice demonstrated his faithfulness to us. The kind of demand God made of Abraham was one the triune God was willing to carry out himself. There's a last sentence, everybody. So deep is God's love for us, Romans 8:31-32, that the late Scottish theologian Thomas Torrance was willing to go so far as to say that, quote, God loves us more than he loves himself. I don't know about that necessarily. It's an interesting phrase because that might be idolatrous, but nonetheless, I like Torrance by and large. But check this out. Very, very interesting. Now, once I'm in a debate with Seth Andrews, who's runs the Thinking Atheist radio show, which is like the number 3 or 2 video popular as far as views on my channel. In a debate with him he brought this up. And one thing that I brought back to him that was interesting, at least I thought, was, oh, so you don't believe that a parent should in any way harm or kill their children? He said, no, of course not. I said, oh, so you're pro-life then?
Yeah.
Now, of course, the answer was no, but I'm going to try to put a link to that. Remind me, guys, if I don't, up there and down here, meaning in the description box and in a little header on top of me. I'm going to try to remember to do that, but that was a very interesting debate. So, okay, Jeff, I hand it back over to you.
Yeah, so you have the problem, we'd say in God's being, he's already superior. Knowledge being the maker of all things. But then the other problem is, and I love this, you have the mad scientist character who is acting amorally, who is complaining about God, and then the question becomes, well, what's your transcendent foundation for stating he's bad and you're good? If you don't have God, you don't have a basis. There was a great YouTube that appeared recently that was, I think it was one of those video ones that I found that was really cool, where the lady kind of points out that yeah, there may be nice atheists out there, but they're doing so on the basis of having no transcendent standard. Why then is goodness preferable to badness? And so, as I look at this character, it's sort of like, well, one, you're borrowing the transcendent values that come from the foundation of biblical faith, and then judging God judging God by those standards while denying that him at the same time. You're really stealing from another worldview, using it against itself.
Frank Turek has an interesting thing on that. He kind of has a theme, and he has a book on that called Stealing from God. So good point, Jeff. So does this conversation come up much in sort of your area of specialty, Jewish apologetics, like in relationship to Messianic, and does this come up much, this Genesis 22 narrative?
Well, it comes up with liberal Jews. See, Dershowitz is the classic example to me. Okay, he's the guy that will say on one hand some ridiculous thing about child abuse and the binding of Isaac, and then on the other hand argue fervently that and then kind of play off quote unquote Jewish values of social justice.
Right.
And it sort of becomes ridiculous, Alan. You need to kind of make up your mind. So it comes up more with liberal Jews. Orthodox don't question the binding of Isaac.
Right.
Okay, because
where do they see the story going, though? Can you help? Do they just have the story as a sort of morality tale to show that Yahweh does not want human sacrifice? Is that all they can do with it?
No, they'll go to Abraham's faith and the merits of the fathers are the reason that God has a covenant relationship. So what's funny is, while Judaism will deny, the idea of inherited sin, they'll say we benefit from the merits of the fathers can be credited to our account. So on one hand, they'll say imparcation or imputation is illegitimate. Christians made up this doctrine. And on the other hand, they'll argue for imputation where the merits of the fathers are credited to the sons. So when I'm arguing imputation of sin, I say, well, look, if there's a basis in Judaism, we were having this discussion on the train when I was in the Feinberg program, the best way maybe to approach a Jewish person who's more orthodox, I don't know whether you could have this conversation, is say, look, while you're complaining about the sin nature, because really human beings are a blank slate in Judaism more than anything else. They'll talk about the evil inclination and the good inclination, but really at the end of the day, they'll leave human beings either as a blank slate or basically good if you're more towards the Reformed and certain thoughts in Judaism. And I say, look, if you can go ahead and state that we accrue from we can be blessed by the merits of the fathers, then why isn't there imputation of the dismerits of the fathers?
Right. Well, this is interesting, and it's funny if you think about it. We're just doing a reaction to a Marvel comic book movie, Venom, and yet look what's in there. Were you surprised at all when I was reading that stuff and playing it? I mean, were you kind of like, what was your kind of initial reaction?
My initial reaction is, remember where Stan Lee grew up.
Well, Stan Lee didn't write this, but I know what you're saying. But that's an interesting thing. Go ahead, share about Stan Lee.
Well, Stan Lee's from a Jewish background. Now, I'm not saying he wrote this,
right?
But when I look at Stan Lee's Marvel comics, I laugh because sometimes I'll see things in it from his background that he's sort of brought in, and I could name characters. I point out there was a synagogue had a class on the Jewish background of the comics, and they found an old comic with the Thing wearing a Jewish prayer shawl. It never got printed, but it was there.
Well, I think he's a Jewish character. Ben Grimm, I think, is a Jewish character from them.
He probably is, although, I'm wondering whether it was Grimmenstein or...
It's clobbering time.
But I'm laughing because what you see sometimes in the comics, and what you're pointing to is we're moving further and further away from this. You're seeing comics that are bashing God a little bit. But what you see in the comics is this whole social justice thing. I would argue some of this stuff floating around is leftover stuff from the idea of social justice. That where do you find this? You find this in the prophets, where the prophets are saying to nations, hey, guys, beating up on your brother, and there's certain natural law, and there's certain things that you should have known, whether you had that revelation or not, and because you've done these things, for 4 transgressions, the Lord will judge you, Tyre, or for 5 transgressions. And you're saying, well, they weren't walking around with a hardbound Bible. How were they supposed to know? And so you see this social justice tradition with the prophets, and I think sometimes there's leftover stuff there. I think less and less, because the comic book writers are further and further removed from Brooklyn in the 1950s and 1960s.
Right.
But every so often, I think it still kind of slips in the characters sometimes.
Yeah, and a lot of these movies, it almost requires it because you have heroism, sacrifice, questions of good and evil, and so like these comic book movies lend themselves to that kind of analysis. But I want to bring up one more thing, and then Jeff, if you have anything to share, you can. But at the very least, I'll let you tell people how to get a hold of you, and then I'll do the freestyle. I want to read from Genesis 1. Because remember, he called into question the poor design, and he called into question everything else. But I want to read this here. This is the end of the creation account in Genesis 1. Verse 26 of Genesis 1. Well, actually, let me start there in verse 25, which ends and it says, and God saw that it was good. So he's referring to the creation, and specifically their day 6. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Now, remember, I just put up a show with Ken Samples I did on the Imago Dei. So if you want to understand that better, please listen to that show. And let them have dominion over the fish of the sea. So there's the mandate for us to care for creation. And over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Notice there's an equality given there between male and female, by the way. And God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. So that's a mandate, actually, not to have population control and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living that moves on the earth. And it goes on, and there's really good stuff. But, the secular worldview calls that into question. But here's the thing is, Genesis 1 isn't the end of the story. We're not living in a Genesis 1 world. We're living in a post-Genesis 3, and in fact, a post-Genesis 6 through 9 world. And what that means is in Genesis 3, the fall happens. So let me bring up real quick this thing. This is by my friend Marty Clapp. He's a local apologist here in Arizona. I don't know if you guys have ever got to meet there, Jeff. He's an awesome guy, though. And he says, in relationship to this design challenge, because remember, they got the villain saying, you know, the human liver's got poor design. Here's what he says. Remember this mnemonic device. It's an acronym. FIT. Because the evolutionist or the atheist, when they attack some design in the human body, like the eye or the spinal cord or the tailbone, they basically are saying it doesn't fit with a theistic worldview. Remember these 3 points, and these are from Marty Clapp. I talked to him earlier in the day, and I love this. Function, incomplete, and trade-off. That's the acronym FIT. Now let me explain it. I'm sorry, did I say function? It's not function, it's fall. That was the whole point of why I brought it up, because I'm bringing up the fall. I don't know why I just did that. Although function could relate too. But fall. Number 1, the design we see in the world is not identical to the original creation. And so you have things like predatory animals and things like that. We're in a fallen state of the world. You know, we don't have the long ages like they did prior to the flood. So number 1, when you talk about the current design situation, remember, it's not the way it's supposed to be. Romans 8 says the creation groans. We live in a fallen world. So that's something to remember in regards to looking around the created order. We have to remember we live in a post-Genesis 3 world. The fall has taken place. Number 2 is incomplete, meaning we don't always have all the information. Remember how I said in 1890, scientists thought there was 180 vestigial, irrelevant organs? Now it's virtually down to 0. Recently, this happened with the so-called myth of junk DNA. And a guy with the Discovery Institute, Jonathan, I just forgot his last name, has a great book on it called The Myth of Junk DNA. And the cover is great. It's got like a trash can dumpster, and it has a helix strand in there, you know what I'm saying? But it shows how once we learn more about so-called junk DNA, we realize, and some of the DNA problems that we see are actually related directly to the fact that we do live in a fallen world, but we realize that junk DNA was not actually junk DNA like it was called. It's a misnomer to call it junk DNA. So we have incomplete information sometimes about the function of these things. Third, there's a trade-off, meaning for every design component, you trade somewhere else. So like there's a fast car, then there's a car that gets good gas mileage, then there's a car with more space, then there's a car, you see what I'm saying? Then there's a smaller car, there's a bigger. You trade off depending on the end goal or purpose. You trade off in certain aspects of design. And so we have to remember there's always a trade-off in design, but that's a common feature of the realities of engineering. And so remember that mnemonic device: FIT, fall, incomplete, and trade-off, given to be my Marty Clapp. All right, Jeff Cran, any final words to tell people how to find you as we sign off here and do a freestyle and all of that?
You can find me at www.zionsbanner.org, or you can look me up on YouTube and stick Zion's Banner in there. Or Jeff Cran would actually be better on YouTube.
All right, right on, man. Hey, much love to you, Jeff. I really appreciate you coming in at the sort of the last second here, man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Yes, sir. All right, I got a couple people in the live chat. I'm going to see G. Will says the Deflating Atheism channel did a video debunking the junk DNA claim. So, hey, if you can drop that link, G. Will, I'm cool with that. That sounds like good stuff. And MLP Shady Oak Ministry, sounds like you know a lot about the Marvel movies, because I see you mentioning a lot of those. So you got a lot of things, which is interesting. Be interesting to talk to you about some of those sometimes. And Lion Bar, that makes an interesting point. The big draw of hero movies today seems to indicate that people are looking for a savior. Actually, I would argue that it's almost like the new pop cultural mythos becomes these fictional characters as we get away from a true savior. I do think there might be sort of a seesaw element to that. I don't disagree, actually, with perhaps that's something happening. Richard James brings up the classic Wolverine episode where he gets saved. I believe that's Nightcrawler, who's like a Roman Catholic, sort of leads him in an evangelism there. And I know the episode you're talking about. It's pretty funny. Just type in Wolverine becomes a Christian or something like that. So, yeah, good point about that. Gerard Perry is asking about what about characters like Thor. Gerard Perry, I actually did an analysis with a fellow Sicilian apologist friend of mine, Lenny Esposito, where we analyzed from a biblical worldview the Thor movie, the last one that came out, and that was a really interesting show. It got super nerdy real fast, but that was an in-depth analysis. So just go to my channel and type in Thor, and you'll find a fantastic, I thought the show was a lot of fun, analysis there, I think, that we did of Thor. Okay, there's a lot here. You guys got some great comments, but I just can't get to all of them. I wish I could. I'm looking, and wow, you guys got some great stuff. But we got some smart people up in here, so that's awesome too. And Dirac, I know you're an atheist, and I'm glad to have you. And the mods are right. As long as you're cool, we're not kicking you out. You're allowed to express your viewpoint. It's all about respect and stuff. I mean, we put up with Hebrew Israelites. We can put up with you, bro. I see you guys arguing in the comment section about Stevie Ray Vaughan and David McBride. I don't know what's going on with that. Oh, man. So, funny things. Oh, here's the last thing I want to bring up before we do the freestyle. MLP Shady Oak Ministries. Vocab Malone, did you mention how Riot, so Riot was one of the other symbiotes who was a lot more bugged out than Venom. He was kind of a bad dude. Pulled a textbook, 2 Corinthians 11, appearing as an angel of light, and now Venom made the preservation of a relationship his top priority like someone else. I think I know what you're saying, but no, I did not mention that, but that's kind of a good point. And it seems like you have definitely seen the movie there. And it seems like you know your nerd stuff too, as well as maybe a little bit of Bible. So I appreciate your comments. We got a great audience. All right, so guys, it's time to do this thing. Again, much love to you, Jeff, for jumping in and joining. Guys, I appreciate you guys helping me go to ETS. Hey, Jeff, have you ever considered going to ETS?
I'd love to go to ETS. I've considered doing it and wanted to do it for 2 years.
Can you? So I'm trying to raise money from supporters. I mean, I'm telling them straight out to go to ETS. Can you tell me why you think it might be? This is not scripted, but let's do this real quick if you can, just before you go. Can you tell people real quick what ETS is and why you think it's important for maybe Christian apologists to be involved or be exposed to it? What's your perspective? Like, why have you wanted to go to ETS, for example?
I think you get to rub shoulders with other theologians.
Top
and
drawer,
maybe
top of the line, bro. Yeah, you do.
And I think that's very important for furthering yourself and sharpening.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that, unlike anything else with Christian apologetics, our foundation, we have a theological foundation that we're operating off of.
Yep.
And so, yes, it's philosophy, but I like to think of apologetics as the place where philosophy and theology are sort of wedded.
Yeah.
And so you need that theological foundation to operate off of.
And ETS is interdisciplinary. So you have New Testament scholars, Old Testament scholars, biblical counselors, scientists, reasons to believe and answers in Genesis are there. You have straight out apologists, William Lane Craig shows up. You have philosophers. So you have all those different disciplines there, the best the evangelical academic world has to offer at the time, and you get to hear what they have to say as well as meet them and rub shoulders. It's kind of almost a continuing education for an apologist. But anything else, because people don't quite know what ETS is. So could you sort of explain a little bit of what it is maybe and maybe,
well, it's the Evangelical Theological Society. I'm holding their journal, which is Jets right up here. I've been reading a little of this.
Hold it back up. Hold it back up.
There you go. Yeah. All right.
Oh, man.
And that's their journal. And so it's hard to explain in the sense that it's interdisciplinary, and to a certain extent, it's not one denomination either.
Oh, yeah, it's multiple. You even have Seventh-day Adventists there sometimes.
Yeah, and so it's the broad spectrum of, but it's not way out nutty theological thought. It's the broad spectrum of good theological scholarship.
Yeah, no J-Dubs, no Mormons, it ain't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what you're getting are the scholars of the day that are the writing scholars and the researchers.
And I don't know if you know this, bro, but every year after ETS, they do an apologetics conference, because one year, I forget who it was, one of the ETS people was like, hey, we've got all these people together in the same city. Why don't we keep some of them over and do an apologetics conference every year afterwards? And so every year, EPS, which is the Evangelical Philosophical Society, which is a part of ETS, every year they host an apologetics conference after the academic conference happens. So it's like Tuesday through like Friday is ETS, and then Friday through Sunday or something like that. I forget. I might be getting it wrong. Maybe it's Thursday through Sunday. There's a conference, and like last year we went to that as well, and Greg Kokel spoke there and stuff. It's really awesome, man. So I do hope you can go one year. If we go, we'll definitely hang out, and I'll introduce you to all the cool kids.
Yeah, that'd be great. Last year I would have been in a better position. I'm sort of like you.
I got you, bro. Well, I mean, that's why I've been telling people basically what it costs, at least. For what I'm trying to get is it's about $590. That's about where it is. That's transportation. That's meals. Someone's already paying for lodging. That's materials and equipment because we're going to live stream from ETS. And that's also resources and promotional materials that we got to get to try to do some things we have in mind as well. Because I'm meeting up with David Wood and all those guys. But thanks. We'll talk about that again later. Listen, I got to get to this freestyle, bro.
Okay.
All right, much love. Hey, everyone give Jeff a shout-out. Do check out his stuff. He's a great guy. Love having him on. Just a faithful brother. And right now, it's time to freestyle. Are y'all ready? Friday night freestyle. About to have some fun. I'm getting all amped. You guys are the best. All right. Sorry, I'm just dumb up in here. But all right, let's see what's up. Let me go. Where to go? Which beat are we going to use today? So that's the end of the... Let's try this one. We've never tried this one before. Huh. That ain't bad. It's a brand new beat provided by Mikey in San Diego. Alright. Let me switch my screen. You know what I mean? Right there. I just switched it. I grab the mic, begin to rip it. I flip it like a pancake. Hey yo, the man makes a lot of mistakes. It's called sin, but I'm born again. He came to the world reconciliation. He reconciled, so I freestyled. You can get adopted, become his child. Stop living crazy, stop living wild. That's Ephesians 2. I'm reading 2, Genesis 1. Hey yo, what up, son? Nissan Cran, he came in the spot tonight. He lit it up right. The dude is dope. That's my man. Hey yo, what up, Jeff Cran? Ha! So I'll rock the mic from here maybe to Pakistan or Iran or Iraq. I'm Vocab Malone, you know I rap. I see y'all in the live chat getting it warm. I see Gerard Perry talking about the church is reformed. My church, it's called Reborn. G Will, props, sir. You told him to live long and prosper, like my main man named Spock. I grab the microphone, begin to rock, like 1, 2, 2, 3. What's up, Michelle Marie? Thank you very much for supporting the live chat and the live stream. Warrior woman on the street, team for the Apologist on media. Grab the mic and I'm beating a mic like down to the ground. Here we go, I ain't got no crown, but I got a black cat, it ain't all of that. I see the black swords man, he says can I pray, so here's my hands together. I'll try to remember, hey yo, it's not December, it's not November, what, it's October. The beat is over. Man. They are, but alright, should we do it again, guys? Should we do it again, guys? Should we do it again? Let me see if I got a beat that I like. Maybe we'll do one more. Let's do one more freestyle. Let's do one more, y'all, before I get out of here. Oh, that's a nice beat, ain't it? By the way, how's the volume, y'all? Alright, let's do that one. Alright. Let's try to rap about Venom and stuff. I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to try my best, alright? Let me try a different beat, actually. If I'm going to rap about Venom, I think I might need to do it, too. Alright, guys, I'm going to try to rap about some Venom stuff. Might be a little tricky. I'll do my best. Fits nice like some denim. Tonight's discussion was all about Venom. You know, there's a song made by Venom. He's the one who made the song on the soundtrack. So I listen to the boom, the bap. That's the beat, and it's in the background. I gave you the background now to the Venom show. He's not a cow, he's an alien. He's a symbiote. And so I even played some audio notes. I quote and I read what they wrote in the script. You know they had a trip on Genesis 22. They was trying to like diss my whole crew, but that's not cool, so we took him to school. We explained about the liver in the Bible, Genesis 3, in a fallen world, but everybody needs their liver over oil. Sorry, that's dumb. Hey, but it's true, you need your liver. Yo. But they try to trip on poor design, but it's a grand design. It's from God's It's from God's mind. His mind is divine, and you will find, if you read this book, go ahead, take a look. It's about the human body, and I looked at it. It was very intriguing. So I have to say, why aren't you believing? There's a creator, because there surely is. He's the maker of the old and the kids, of everybody across the planet. Look at the design and you'll understand it. And yo, we spoke about something not from the garage. We spoke about the villain in Carnage. I met Carnage. He's kind of red, and Venom is crazy. He be biting people's heads clean off and then throw them in the street. Venom is hungry. He likes to eat some meat. That's why he's got the sharp teeth. He's black and white. He loves to fight. Him and Eddie Brock are a pair, that's right. And now they friends when the movie ends. So what's gonna happen? Wait for the sequel, my man. Hey, yo, I'll probably give it like a 3. The movie's kind of dope. You could go see it. But I don't know if you should take your kids, because it's some swear words, plus some parts that might make them scared. Just having fun, right? All right, y'all. Well, we have went long enough. You guys were awesome. Listen, we're about to be done, and I need to tell you something. Tomorrow, I'm gonna go live again, and again, this is an effort to do a trilogy telethon, meaning 3 shows in a row when I normally don't go live, in an effort to I mean, I've said what it is, you know, I've been explaining this, to help us get out to Denver to ETS, right? You know, I've explained that, and I also want to give you guys good content in the process. So there's that, you know what I'm saying? You know what's going on. So you guys have been great. There is a GoFundMe for it. And I'm going to live stream from ETS in Denver. I'm going to be meeting up with the Apologetic Avengers, David Wood, John McCrae, blah, blah, blah. But let me not talk about that more. I'll talk about that later. But listen, check this out. Tomorrow I'm going to interview an ex-Hebrew Israelite. So the interview's lined up. He's a Dominican cat in Florida. Now he lives in Queens, New York. But this dude left one of the main, most important, biggest camps called the ICGJC. He was in there since a teenager. He was in there for over a decade, right? But here's the interesting thing, really the tragic thing. Sometimes when we interview ex-Hebrew Israelites, they're Christians. But I'm going to show how people leave sometimes this Hebrew Israelism thing, and they don't always become Christians. This ex-Hebrew Israelite I'm going to interview tomorrow, he's an atheist. Now, I'm not having him on to debate him. So some of you are going to get mad because you're going to say, you had an atheist on. Why didn't you take him to task? Now, if it's a debate, it's a debate, and I'll debate an atheist. But I told him already, this is an interview. I want to get your information and truth, but I am going to let people know you're an atheist. I do want to find out why you became an atheist, and I told him at the end of the show I might ask him about some of the atheistic memes he's put up on his channel. So, this guy went from Hebrew Israelism, which, with all its flaws, at least it says believes in the Bible, to atheism. So I think this is going to be a very good, very important show tomorrow. And I really hope you guys do tune in tomorrow to tomorrow's show when I interview an ex-Hebrew Israelite who has a lot of information. He's got a channel that has a lot of good information. The problem is it also has attacks on the Bible. So I'm warning you guys in advance. Now, when are we going to do this? I'll keep you posted. Let me know real quick in the comments and in the chat. Would you rather me do this more in the morning or more in the evening? So far, we're leaning towards the evening. Let me tell you about what time we might do it, okay, guys? Real quick. We're thinking about 8 o'clock or something like that, East Coast Standard Time. Would that work for you guys? His name is San Miguel. San Miguel. That's his name. Let me see what time I told him. But are you guys cool with that if we go do this around 8 o'clock East Coast time, which is like 5 o'clock my time? That's about when we're thinking. So anyway, stay posted because that's about the time we're thinking, guys. But I think it's going to be a powerful interview, so look for that tomorrow. And again, thank you guys for the support. This has been a great program. Much love to y'all. Yeah. 8 or 9 or so, maybe a little earlier, but not much later, East Coast Standard Time. So you guys are awesome. This is going to be very interesting. Okay, evening it is. I see you guys want to do it in the evening. Thank you again for all the support. And Michelle Marie, what's up to you? Good to see you. Oh, Roxby, you're going to miss it. Oh, it's tough. It's hard not to have the Roxby. Well, tell me when you would prefer, and I'll try to see if I can move it around, but I don't know. I don't know. I know it's tough on the weekends, guys. But I'm going to try to make the show about an hour. This one went a little bit longer. I'm going to try to just make tomorrow's about an hour. All right, so with that, guys, thank you again for helping me get to Denver. And we're going to do this again tomorrow, and it's going to be a great show. So peace out. It's time to stare at the camera.